What's good? What's good? What's good? How everybody doing this morning?
There's time where a person don't understand the beauty of another one. They always think of it in physical form, but beauty is not physical, it's inner, it's emotional, it's everything what the world don't see. So, yeah, he or she may be looking at that goal in that person. That's why your heart is broken, but they ain't looking at the true form of beauty. You cannot.
All my life, always knew I was bigger. Bigger than the love, bigger than the drugs, bigger than the thugs. It was written by the scripture.
What up?
Big is better. Some people need a hug.
Quinn, what up?
Darker than berry, sweeter than juice. Order, darker than
Nicholas, what up? What up? What up? Let a couple people come in the room this morning. Cricket, what up? Word, fuck Trump. That's like saying good morning and shit, right? Good morning, y'all. What up, what up, what up? How y'all doing this morning? I gotta tag a couple people in the room. They be mad at me, man. How y'all? Cause I get through here and start running my mouth, and lately people be in my inbox like, man, how you ain't tagging me? And I be like, damn. But nah, it was good. This morning I wanted to chop it up with y'all. Have a real good morning convo for y'all. Well, I'll probably show something after that too. You know what I'm saying? But the first thing I wanted to show y'all was today. You know, y'all hear me talking about law. I give y'all a lot of history, but the truth is law and history go together. They go hand to hand. So as much history as I give you, or the things that I present to you, it's important that you have an understanding of history so that the laws, when we get into the laws here and there, because in between every so often I'll start breaking laws down or have videos that showing you law and the concepts of law so that we can all understand it. Because at the end of the day, a person telling you some information, spiritually, all that shit don't mean nothing if you can't use it. So let's get to it. This morning, the first video that we gonna watch and get to it, you know what I'm saying, what up, is, you say you like the shirt, word, look like yours is gold, just like the one you bought. So, let's get to it. The first video today, and the main video is What is Law and What is Not by Taj Terik Bey. Now, Taj is one of my favorite, meaning that like 9 years ago, I knew nothing about law, and just watching Taj and some of the pointers he gave me and the information I got from Taj Terik Bey, and then that I was already studying, but it set me on a path to teach me to understand the concepts. So when I was in the courtroom or when I was dealing with police officers, at the point I became comfortable. You know what I mean? So sometimes you just got to watch things over again, maybe 7 months later, and things you didn't understand the first time you get it. So let's tap in. What's law and what's not?
And why it's very important for people to know the real history, because not to know the real history, you must know world history and European history, and you must dismiss the black and white game. If you don't, you're already in the trap. You're in the matrix. All right, the other thing is, there's certain things that we were talking about earlier, different things that we're hitting on, and hearing people say different things. One of the things I recognize that a lot of people fail to recognize is law, what it is not, what brings it about. And so I think with a lot of us, this can help. And I'm going to go to this point first, then we're going to open up the questions so that we can deal with the matters that are important or that's before us. Now, pardon me, all civilization operates on contract. There's no such thing as civilization operating without contract. Contract is an agreement,
Michelle, what up?
a treaty,
Feel you.
constitution, verbal, oral, however. They're covenants. They're all forms of contract. One of the things that I see that's a weakness with us is because of the usurpation of the United States Republic, which the Moors helped set up. People unconsciously keep equating the U.S. democracy and the United States Republic, which is the first weakness. I want to make it very, 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 very clear. The U.S. democracy has no law. The United States Republic of Morocco has the Constitution. They cut Morocco off that is what the slavery really is. Do you understand? People's
Mary,
concept of what the slavery is in the Western Hemisphere is totally wrong. So before you can really understand how to deal with the law, you must understand what the secret societies did. You have to have, put it this way, if you don't have any knowledge as to what is the body of information or the foundation principle body of information that the secret societies across the world have, you can't understand how and why governments are run. Do you understand? It's not left to emotions. And we have a tendency when waking up to still mix emotions with realities. This is where we get caught in the matrix that everybody is talking about. And that vague area where foreign authorities are able to take jurisdiction in other areas where they have none. And then we get to the position of arguing what the law is and what the law is not. And so you come back to the foundational principles. And so if you don't understand the political evolution on how the Europeans established government here, then you can't understand law, nor can you understand your history, nor can you understand their history, nor can you understand how we interchange. It is because of the Inquisitionists and when they started the artificiality of race, that's part of the trap. If you get caught into that, you're caught in the trap. So one of the things that you have to do is to begin to dissolve in your mind the fictions and then begin to deal with the realities. The reality is that this is one broad and expanded human family that's broken down into broader families that are called nationalities. Once you took that game when the sociologists started creating the race game in order to start to divide the people so they could rob them, and you take that as an information base and you go from that on any point, whether you're dealing with law, governments, etc., you're already wrong. It is no different than if I say, well, let's give you a mathematical problem, and we're going to give you 3 columns of numbers, whether it's addition, subtraction, multiplication. We're not going to argue that. I'm going to give you 3 columns of numbers. Then I don't tell you that one column is written in invisible ink. Your outcome will never be right. You understand? Parabolically, you understand that. So what happens with us when we're getting into issues of litigation, issues of controversy between diversities of people, diversities of states, diversities of status, etc.? We have a tendency to go right in and to assume people who are assuming jurisdiction have a jurisdiction in the matter and or the person, and we give them jurisdiction. Then we start arguing issues of trying to get out of certain situations when they never had it in the first place that you give it to them. Do you understand?
And jurisdiction being the thing, when we talk about law, jurisdiction is, and this is how I explain to anybody who I talk to about jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is like when the police come to you and they stop your car and they say, license and registration. They say, what were you doing today? When you answer that question, it's like a mother or a parent asking a child, and when you answer, you gave them jurisdiction. Now, you could say something like, well, sir, you could take over the conversation, and like me, I would say, well, sir, I'm not Negro, black, or colored, I'm a Moor, can I speak to superior officer, da-da-da, right? But if you answer their questions, then that's what he means. We assume that they have the power to do what they do. So a lot of times I ask the police, I would say, when they finish, I say, well, by law, I have the right to see my accuser. You said somebody called you, right? And if you can't bring your accuser to me, I'm free to go. Now, I don't just pull off, but it's just letting them know I understand.
Meaning that for law to exist, if I make a claim on you or against you, if I make a claim on you or against you, what you should be arguing to me is not necessarily the substance of the matter. If I say to you, we're really upset with you because you're $5.50 and 2 bags of popcorn. Say, well, that's kind of high. And, I don't feel as though that's fair. When what you should be arguing is not that. But number one, where did I derive my authority? And enter it into the record. That's number one. Because before I can claim a right or an authority over you, the only way that your birthright can be given to me in any sovereign capacity, if you're in agreement with me through your parents or through some organized system government prior to me, that which I'm by bloodline obligated to, and didn't dissolve or your birthright is your own. Do you understand? You're the law. Do you understand? And if I impose that on you, then I'm maintaining slavery, which is a violation of civilization, which gives you a right to take that person's head, really. And any other civilized person has the right and authority in assisting you in international law to take that person's head. Do you understand? So if I say to you that you're in violation of something, what you're supposed to say to me says, you're not even arguing that. Well, if you're making a claim, introduce it into the evidence before people of my own national peers. According to national or international law, introduce the evidence and the complaint, right? And see if it's validated by the people. And then they'll decide whether something goes with this or not. Right now, I'm not making any claims, or counterclaims one way or another. Not making any pleas or anything. There's no pleas. Do you understand? Now, for me to have a claim that to be valid, number one, there are three issues in any issue of contention, controversy, etc. And this is where we're weak at very often because we don't look at this and we let people bypass them. First issue is your status. Can I raise this? Has this been done over? All right.
Listen, if y'all don't listen to nothing else, listen to this man.
Now, and keep this in mind. And while I'm talking to you, I'm going to explain to you also why the game is played, the color game is played. It's actually political sorcery, if you understand it.
I self-law and master, right? I self-law.
And basically, the stuff is very, very simple once you have certain fundamental component parts. So you have to understand. Right? Then you have
facts.
Now, in issues of controversy, that's the process. So the first thing that comes before any court, any lawful court. Now you can have colorful courts, and you can have, where you have organized criminals come together and then deny process, which is common. And one of the weaknesses that people have is that they assume that people that hold government seats are not criminals. That's your first problem. It's sort of like the same misnomer that they assume that somebody, a priesty guy of the Bosnatzeldorf, of the God and Christ of Jesus and Allah and all that kind of stuff, and you get all like that and figure that person's sinless and all that stuff. They're usually the dirtiest people on the planet. Do you understand what I'm saying? Steal your dog's food and take grandmom's lunch money without a conscience. And the only problem with you is that you keep assuming that these people have some kind of authority or some kind of morality that does not apply to them.
Odell, what up?
One of the things that we have to do is no different than criminal people in government assume authority and assume jurisdiction that they do not have, so do people with titles. And so whenever someone has a title, if that title applies to any public office or any public institution, the first thing that you're to require of them is not declaring their title, but declaring their title by their actions. So therefore, you should understand fundamentally what is the designated authority of anyone in any particular office, whether DOA or is the delegation of authority order, time of their installation in that office.
Now I know he's flying because I ain't seen this in a while, but like the DOA, for example, the delegation of authority order. Let me give you an example of what that is. So when the cops pulled us over, me and my homeboy, like 2-3 years ago, we was in Raleigh, they pulled us over. And he was listening to me, but his partner wasn't trying to hear me. So I was like, yo, do you even have the right to pull me over? Do you have a delegation of authority order from Congress that says that you have a right to stop him on his soil? See, knowing this shit is very important. Because when they superiors get there, it's like, do you have respectfully, sir, do you have a delegation of authority order? And none of them niggas, nobody has it. Nobody. And nobody has a delegation of authority order, which is a letter from Congress that gives them the permission to come after the people that own the land.
in good behavior, what the delegated authority is, what the conditions are, when it terminates, and how it terminates. And that's all the time in government. Do you understand? Particularly in a Republican form of government.
Write that down. Delegation of authority order.
You understand? Now, the Inquisitionist job was, and what their mission was, and it came even before we made this agreement, to undermine the Republic. This is the reason why the plenipotentiaries with the Moors warned the people once we finally decided to make peace and stop this silly wars that we're going over and over again, that you now have a republic if you're willing to keep it. And now you have a whole bunch of grown people in grown bodies with the mentality of little boys and girls that keep calling this a democracy, and as soon as they say that, they lose their political birthright. As soon as you agree to that without a challenge, you've given up your political birthright and you've agreed to a fraudulent jurisdiction. Now, so what that makes you is booty and prize to organized criminals who will tell you to your face that this is a democracy and you haven't challenged it. No different if they call you Negro, black, and colored and you didn't challenge it.
And what is booty? Booty is what, well, you know, in court, the flag with the orange fringes is not the so-called flag. It's the military flag, but it's the Marine flag. So they're charging us like we're on boats, right? And so when you think about it, like legally they're charging us like we're on boats, and they'll say, well, we came out of our mother's water. You know what I'm saying? Even though there's a different law for land and water, that's a whole nother conversation. You know what I'm saying? But that's what, let me go back a little bit.
You've given up your political birthright and you've agreed to a fraudulent jurisdiction. Now, so what that makes you is booty and prize to organized criminals who will tell you to your face that this is a democracy and you haven't challenged it. No different if they call you Negro, black, and colored and you didn't challenge it. It's assumed. If assumed and you don't object, it stands.
Right. So, meaning, and I'm giving y'all context so it makes super sense. So, for example, when the cops approach me, they have the right to assume that I'm Negro, black, or colored, meaning they have the right to assume that I'm a black person. And so this is what they mean by ignorance of the law is no excuse. So when they approach me, it's up to me to say, when the cops come, they have the right to assume that, by law, they have the right to assume that you're Negro, black, or colored, meaning they have the right to assume that you're African-American or whatever. They have the right to assume it. It's up to you, yourself, to claim it. You have to claim it for yourself. So when they come up, you have to distinguish yourself from what's not real, right? So you have to distinguish yourself from being colored so that law can apply if it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So they have the right. So that's when the cop come, they'll say you ignorance of the law, but you have the right to tell a police officer that too. So respectfully, sir, ignorance of the law is no excuse. If you're telling me you don't know what I'm talking about, that's why I have to speak to your superior. And I'm gonna sit down until your superior gets here. But really, I be on my square, so they really can't touch you if you know the rules.
Do you understand? This is another reason why anything relative to the rights of people is made in a public declaration. So you must make a public declaration of your independence from the fraud, as well as your declaration of your allegiance to the principles of civilized government.
So you must say when they come up, hey, sir, license registration, they walk up and, excuse me, sir, we got a phone call. First of all, sir, I'm not black, I'm a Moor. Meaning that I'm putting, which is status. Meaning that I'm letting them know who I am and what nation I come from, that I am civilized, that I am not property. So I started realizing back in the day, this is probably what the free slaves were saying. They had to be speaking of nationality or of being relating to some nation, whether for tribe or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? But you have to claim this for yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Do you understand? And so even like when
you speak your existence.
Like children say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. All right, that's cliche to most people. However, it means more than what they think it means. Do you understand? Now, that's those who pledge allegiance to the peace between the Moors and the European nations in here and establish this government of amity and peace and to do commerce in this Moorish empire.
Hold on. Live with what you missing. Only thing we just started, we're talking about what is law and what's not. And we breaking down the 3 steps of government: status, jurisdiction, and adjudication. You know what I'm saying? So.
Do you understand? What they did is overthrew it. Six and Chestnut and they took the nationality and birthrights away from the Moors, and different Moors were in government. They told them step down or die. You understand? And they instituted in 1779 the Negro and the black crap retroactively into the history documents. They started burning documents. They started hiding documents, transferring books into different areas of the countries and into secret societies. And they started making up new records. And in the new records, they started listing the Moors as blacks, Negroes, according to the territories. And they take the children and send the children in the Northeast Territory, they send them to the Southeast Territory. They take them from the Southeast Territory, send them to the Northwest Territory, and vice versa across the Nile River, which you call the Mississippi. And they've been playing the game, they even do it in military.
Why the fuck do you think that they was taking kids from slaves and sending them across the fucking country to disassociate them from what the fuck is going on? You know what I'm saying? So now you can see why the runaway slave bill was passed to lock up the indigenous Moors who were conscious. So that's what's that, 12 Years a Slave? That's what that movie about. And the way you know he was a Moor, because they always put an instrument in the nigga hand.
Then Horace Greeley, who you saw, said, "Go West, young man," was competing with Abe Lincoln, etc. He was like a tycoon with newspapers in New York. And they went about, Noah Webster too, went about altering the history, rewriting the history. That's your real truth of your period of Reconstruction. Those who know a lot of these fundamental keys have an oath of death, belong to secret societies. You notice that they'll wear our fez too in those secret societies. They call them Masons, Knights of Columbus, Eastern Star, Skull and Bones, and whoever they are next week. But the fundamental bottom line knowledge is Moabite, Moorish history and culture in this land, not somewhere else. And Africa is not a Keeblan there. Northwest Africa and Southwest Africa is North America, Central America, South America. The Amazon River.
You remember when we was watching the junk yesterday and the dude said he found an old dictionary and he said that the definition of a Moor was anybody that live in Northwest Africa? You're welcome. The whole world was one, right? The whole, at one time it's called Mu, or the European called it Pangea, right? So what we call the Americas is like the Northwest, Southwest. It's in that area. We just don't think like that. So when they write it, they write it that way.
Is not over there. The Amazon River is in South Africa, right here in the West. You understand? Now, the concept is that people are wrongly under the concept that the European sons established this with the peregrinos that you call pilgrims, which means wanderers, that they established this government out of some moral principles and they established the United States. That's a lie. The United States already existed. Do you understand? The United States is a federation of the Moabite tribes that they fakedly call Indians, and we're not Indians. My grandmother is Blackfoot, that they call fakery Blackfoot. On my mother's side, they're Cherokee, that they call Kitawa. And I ain't Indian. I'm indigenous to the land, but I ain't Indian. One of the traps that a lot of the Shemnites fell into, because you have a lot of sellout. A lot of different tribes that sold out, but that didn't constitute an agreement with the nation. They fake it in history that it does. This is the reason why they had to murder so many of them. Do you understand? Separate the children from the mothers, because the mothers carried the principles of civilization and passed them down, because we had a matriarchal system. You understand? Like in the South areas, as an example, when they call Puerto Rico, they call it rich port because the women carried the gold, and most of the time we'd put gold on the neck and it would have no seam, you couldn't take it off, and the family wealth would be displayed by the women, or we put coins and stuff on, jewelry on their turbans, mix it into their turbans, and they wear bands around here, and they would cut their heads off and cut their arms off for the gold, and they call it rich port. That's how Puerto Rico got its name. And they're Moors, mixed Moors. They mix Moors with Europeans and Chinese. Do you understand? So one of the problems with us is because we've been mixed, is that our concepts are wrong, and we keep thinking that we're different people when we're really not. We're just expanded of the same expanded family. And the base language here on this side is part Aramaic, Hebrew, and what you call Algonquian, that they call Indian different languages, and what they call Moorish Latin, that they keep calling falsely Spanish, which it is not. It's Latin, Moorish Latin, multiple dialects. And so one of the deals
we have
with the Inquisition,
intentionally,
when they
taught the wrong things,
merged their kingdoms and defeated the Moors and started conquering the West, is one of the commitments of the White Camellia, the Klan, and the Knights of Columbus was to wipe us out of history. Do you understand? This is the reason why you cannot go and find the linear history. But that's also why you have all these secret societies that consequently and curiously keep wearing the Moorish fez. And you never figured it out. Do you understand? Then they have badges all across their car with the Moorish star upside down, with the Eastern Star. Then they have the compass in the square and the pyramid. They have Allah and Mecca and Morocco and Medina, and they'll name all the lodges after a mother, woman, the matriarchal systems, etc. And then rewrite the history and tell the people that they came from someplace else. These are the same people that thought the world was flat. But if you believed it, that's fine. But we were here for not 1,000 years, for multiple thousands of years. That flag, that Moroccan flag with that 5-pointed green star, been flying over here in government structure for over 10,000 years. Before the great drownings, they had drowning first, and the great burns and burning of the temples of Luxor, like in Mizraim, that they call Egypt. It's not Egypt, it's Mizraim, etc., that they call Alexandria today, was the largest library in the world, and they match it with the Library of Congress here being now the largest library in the world. So, and they have the history of all the countries here too. So one of the keys is that Moors cannot be deported. See, it's sort of like one of the conflicts that people have here is that they're in a frame of mind that we're all right and we start from here. And so whenever they go forward, it always becomes jumbled or confusing because it becomes non-linear, and you're always playing detective. And then nobody's talking. And then those who are talking want to commit you to some kind of oath or want you to sell your life, your arm to them. You know what I mean? Then it's a secret. Get the point? This is the problem that the scholars and the world governments had with Noble Drew because he came and he stepped on the Roman seal. He stepped on the Roman seal.
The Roman seal?
That's a code. See, the deal was that this basic information was not to be found out by you.
Right.
The commitment was that this general body of information would be hidden for at least 300 years, maybe 1,000. That accepted social concept, though not limited to, would be revealed to you in the William Lynch letter along the James River when they talked about using the mental warfares of turning the men against the women, the young against the old, distorting the family. But there's more to that. It also had to do with the psychology and the knowledge of how to distress the womb and how to make a slave. By stressing the womb of the woman and controlling the womb, then you control the nation. The problem is that they cannot deport us from anywhere. No matter what negatives come about due to the social corruption here, they cannot deport us. So they have to continue to build jails. Do you understand? I want to make another point.
Saying that international law states that you cannot send a people from a land to another land they do not come from. It's against international law. Even meaning they're in slavery. So think about that law. That's why they build prisons.
This is Brother Noah. Get a 3 flag stand later, and you put the flag, the amity flag there.
Right.
That's
bro.
the Stars and Stripes. Now, what most people don't know is that this continental flag is the flag of the United States. The Stars and Stripes is our agreement for commerce. Yes, what they did is buried this and then told you the Stars and Stripes was the national flag. The Stars and Stripes is not the flag of any natal people. It does not identify with any bloodline whatsoever. It is a flag that came out of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1787, which was a culmination before the Articles of Confederation and the adoption of the Constitution, when we decided to stop this silliness, meaning wise men decided to stop the pendulum. Because the wars between the Moors and the Roman nations have been stagnating civilization. Meaning it's no different than the position that we're in now with all the lies that have been told amongst government, and they're caught in a catch-22. They're going to create all-out war, a whole global war, or they're going to tell the truth. They're trying not to tell the truth. If they don't tell the truth, you're going to have chaos on this planet like you've never seen it. Do you understand? And it's going to be because of a lie.
It's already started.
Yes, but it's going to be because of a lie.
That's right. The lie is being exposed.
Yes. Now that's where we are. That's where the problem is. And the problem that you have is that you have Asiatics and Europeans that have been set up in the political arena being in two different camps. But in fact, you actually have, in the real truth history, you have Asiatics and Europeans who agreed to this structure. And then you had Europeans who were undermining it. So this is where your matrix is. So whenever you have an issue before any court and you want to argue an issue, no matter what it is, and this is where people get trapped. Now I'm going to ask you, little sister, Princess. You ever heard the name or the word America, Americans? Are you familiar with it? You hear it a lot, don't you? Now we're going to run through a test. I'm going to show you something. This is a real key that you can use in law, etc. Whenever somebody's trying to trap you. Look how subtle it is. What do you know about that word, that name? You can talk a little louder, honey, because right now you're the teacher.
I know that people that live in America are Americans.
Hmm?
I know that people that live in America are Americans.
All right, where's America? Geographically located. All right, let's look at this. You see here, Falkland Islands, huh?
Yeah.
You see the tip of Argentina, Chile, huh?
Yeah.
It's Argentina, Chile, right?
Yeah.
You see up here, Alaska,
Yes.
huh? You see up here, part of Greenland up here, just up here, just below Greenland,
Yes.
or next to it, huh?
Yeah.
Latitudinally, coming down here. You see these islands here?
Yes.
You see down here one of our old sacred places, Easter Island?
Yes.
That's America. Central, North, South. Tell me who's the American president.
George Bush.
Oh, he's the president of Brazil? Because that's the United States. You know that's the United States of America, don't you?
By law, it is. It's South America.
El Salvador is the United States of America. Did you know that?
No.
Mexico is the United States of America.
Let me explain. You see how big like China is? They got one leader technically, right? But we don't realize that the Moors were the most wealthiest people on the planet because they had access to the biggest landmass. Meaning that water has to separate bodies technically in old law, but more importantly, meaning that America is from here all the way down here. So no, this is still a part of Central America. This is North, Central, and South America. And even when we say the name, it's America. So this is where we go back to some of them fucking passports what I was telling y'all about. Do you need a passport? It's all the same shit. It's what you understand in life.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
That's because they cheated you in school. They did a deliberate dumb down so that you wouldn't understand that United States is a generic term. That's just like me saying woman or girl. So if I say woman or girl, am I addressing anyone specifically? You can answer, but you don't have to, do you? But if you assume that you're the only woman in here, you'll say that loosely, would never even give it a second thought, wouldn't you? Then all they need to do is create a fraudulent jurisdiction that's assumed and you don't challenge it, then they take you in it, and they have no authority whatsoever. There's no such thing as the American president. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as the American flag. It doesn't exist. There is a such thing as American presidents and American flags that come from here on up and all across all these islands. So when somebody comes before you and starts talking law and starts talking like he has jurisdiction over matter, the first thing is what you're supposed to ask him, oh, I have no problem. Where's your nationality card? That's for one. Then your certificate, delegation of authority order, that proves the jurisdiction of whichever America you're talking about and whatever constitutional government you're aligned with. Then we can start talking the subject matter. Maybe, if I feel like it. Because you haven't even proven you haven't even proven who you are. What happens is we keep on assuming people have jurisdiction because they can say, you know, sis, I'm the agent of the left-hand side of the BHAbout Incorporated.
Raleigh Police Department, basically.
Where's your $5 from that bill I sent you? And you start saying, oh man, I didn't get my second job, and you start talking the subject, you start talking the jurisdiction. You give the jurisdiction because you haven't recognized that I didn't even establish it. Means that no one has authority in civilization or in government unless verified by the sovereignty of the people. Governments are established to protect, do you understand? And preserve and secure the existing, pre-existing rights of people. That's called inalienable rights and is more relative to what birthrights are. Do you understand, sister?
See, I use that word a lot, whether talking to the superior officers or talking to the judges. And when I say for the record, I let them know, like, you know, I have the right to travel. I have the right to travel. For the record, they still be talking about driving without a license. For the record, I have the right to travel, and it is inalienable, which means it cannot be taken. It can't be. You know what I'm saying? Inalienable means it's nothing that they can do to take it from you.
I know not immediately, but I started off with you being involved because you need to recognize, and that is us plurally, that when somebody starts throwing that American loose to you, and United States court, and the United States this, they can be talking about this, they can talk about this, and if they don't have any allegiance to the Constitution, they haven't set it up, they didn't prove anything to you. They can have you in some pirate court, and you don't even know it. And you agreed to it because you allowed the jurisdiction because you didn't challenge who they are in the first place. So there's a set of questions. Whenever you have an issue of controversy, particularly if they put you in a position where you have to defend yourself, remember at all times, one of the things that really got a lot of the secret societies upset and government upset, that really kind of broke the back of this thing that started this whole cycle in early 1900s when Newell Raleigh started the Moorish Divine National Movement, and one of the first things he did was start issuing the indigenous people their nationality cards. That began a cycle that they didn't understand at the moment. But what it begins to establish is the true jurisdiction or true sovereign of the land. But if it's not used properly, you can't understand it. Do you understand? Meaning that, like right now, say me and you, Griswold, say, man, oh, we finished now, let's go have some lunch, man. They got some nice kelp sandwiches back there and nice vegetable stuff, and so we're gonna go, let's go to Russia right now. So now we're gonna go to Russia, jumping in Russia, and we're gonna start talking.
Like a driver's license, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like they told me one time in court that that driving, in North Carolina, they was like, well, Mr. Bey, 'cause I made him, you know, well, Mr. Bey, driving is a privilege. No, driving commercially is a privilege, but traveling is inalienable. For the record.
trash. Well, the Russian Constitution says you can't do this and you can't do that. First thing they want to argue is, we don't have a problem either way or the other. Where's your nationality card? That gives you any authority to even argue law here. Now, if you deal with an issue of controversy between more than one state, etc., we can deal in consular court or court of general sessions or some international court. But you can come here and start arguing law. You understand? You're starting to talk privileges then. But if you're a citizen, and you can only be a citizen, then you can be a natural citizen of the land, and you can be a political citizen of an organized government. Both of which, and more to the second than the first, requires proof. You know, it is no different than, you know, like under a colonial jurisdiction, like say, for instance, like in a jurisdiction where they steal the people's rights of travel and then incorporate it and incorporate the person and then put them in a commercial entity and then regulate the people's right of travel and then rob them that way under the guise of law. And then if a private security officer, because they're not officers really, so that's wrong. If a private security agents, which they call police, because they're not elected, so they're not officers, stops a person, whether you call them citizen or not, stops a person and asks that person, where is their license? Well, the person should also ask them, where's your delegation of authority order? Because that's where they're supposed to have received certified authority from the Congress of the United States Republican form of government that they have a right to even question the citizens under limited conditions.
See, I want y'all to understand. You ever notice growing up when y'all see the Republicans, they act like they own the world because they're sitting on our side. This nation was founded so that we could stop fighting each other. There was a war between the Muslims, the Moors, and the Christians, the Europeans, for thousands of years. So we agreed that we would stop the wars and sit side by side. You know what I mean? And we sit on one side, they sit on the other side. The Republican Party is an imitation of us. We supposed to be sitting there acting bougie. But that's why they act like that, because they're playing the role.
For security purposes only, and if you committed a crime. And only one can really do that is a sheriff. And anyone he deputizes. Because he's the only true law according to the law. Do you understand? Anyone else is just another citizen of some private corporate agencies that's talking trash because they don't have a right to question the citizens.
You heard what he said. I'm going to go back. The sheriff. We was talking about the sheriffs yesterday, and I asked y'all, did I see sheriffs shooting people?
Stops a person and asks that person, elected so they're not officers. Stops a person, whether you call them citizen or not, stops a person and asks that person, where is their license? Well, the person should also ask them, where's your delegation of authority order?
Who's delegating you
because
over me? Right,
that's
bro.
where they're supposed to have received certified authority from the Congress.
Who gave you the delegation?
Of the United States Republican form of government that they have a right to even question the citizens under limited conditions.
Sheriff, yes.
For security purposes only, and if you committed a crime. And only one can really do that is a sheriff. And anyone he deputizes. Because he's the only true law according to the law. Do you understand? Anyone else is just another citizen of some private corporate agencies that's talking trash.
Let me prove to y'all that he ain't just talking. So the first time I did this shit, I went to jail, keeping it 1,000. But I was bold enough to do it. The only way you're gonna truly learn is you got to be willing to go to jail or you know what I'm saying, or study and don't go to jail. But you got to be willing to make a mistake. So when they went to court, and I told them, and I represented myself, and I went to jail, and they arrested me, but it was my fault, some things I didn't do right. Now, I asked for a sheriff. I went to court Tuesday. I said, yo, because they was trying to arrest me, and I was like, yeah. I said, for the record, these are not sheriffs, these are deputy sheriffs. I requested a sheriff. Of course, they didn't bring me one then. Now, they told me, like, you know, so I can have you arrested. And I was like, go ahead, because you're violating. But see, I said, go ahead. I was young. I was dumb. But I gave them the authority too. But they still were, it was still wrong. Because everything else I did right except for that piece. Now, they arrested me, held me in contempt. You're supposed to get 30, 60, 90, 120. I got 6 days. I thought that number was kind of demonic, personally. Then you got to come back to the same judge and represent yourself. When I got back to the court because they brought me back to court on that 6th day, when they brought me there, I didn't have no representation. A black lady from Wake County came in and told me that she was impressed that I was the first person to represent myself in this manner in the Wake County courts. Like she hasn't seen it before. Then, in the middle of us talking, we had knocked and the real sheriff walks in, or the sheriff. And so he says, hold on one second. He said, Mr. Bey, what happened? So I told him, I came in, they asked me for my DNA for child support. I told him that the kid's not mine, but I know the person is trying to be funny. And I said, but I told him that he didn't have the right for the record to ask me for my DNA because I wasn't a felon. You know what I'm saying? I said, and I asked him, are you asking me? And he felt some way and they tried to force me. And that's where everything went left in the courtroom. Now, he said, well, they didn't have the right. And I said, now I understand law. I said, now I understand that you have the right to shoot the judge if they hold me today. Like I know by law that you being a sheriff, you have to uphold the right of me as a Moor, and you have to uphold the right of what I'm saying. You have the right to shoot the judge in his face in the middle of the courtroom and uphold the Constitution because what they're doing is unconstitutional. And he was like, well, listen, the deputy sheriffs do not have the right and they should not have sent you to jail. Right? And then she says to me, she said, but listen, you are very intelligent. She said, but you can't fight this game in here from behind the wall by yourself. Where's your nation? Where are your people? And she was looking at me like she knew what she was saying. And she was one of us. And she was like, look, how about this? She said, do you trust? I said, I don't understand the trust thing. She said, listen, we're going to get you out of here. The sheriff is going to stand on your left. I'm going to stand on your right. And when they ask questions, just allow us to get you out of here. You're not pleading guilty to anything, but just allow me to get you out so that you can finish your job. And I went in there, and so it was a different judge. That's the first thing I noticed, like, oh, snap. So I realized that I forced them to be honorable. So when I got in there, he said, well, he looked at me, said, I don't know why they arrested you in the first place. And it was an older man. You know what I'm saying? And he was like, they shouldn't have arrested you. He was a European. He was like, well, don't worry. We'll get you out of there. Just get back to the stuff. As soon as you get there, everything will be processed and you'll be out of there. Now, the sheriff did his job. The truth is, before I went to court, another time, I called Fayetteville, which is the military, following suit, and said, listen, I've gotten a ticket for driving without a license, and I'm arguing, and I was talking to the sheriff first, and he told me in the country he would arrest me too. And I said, well, and like I told him, and I said, you would arrest me, and I have your badge. And then I asked him for his number for his bond, which is, I said, can I have your bond number? Which they don't like. That's in case I can sue you for not upholding the Constitution. He's like, you can ask the judge for their bond, right? And then he hung up the phone. Then I called the postmaster in Fayetteville and asked them would they come to the courtroom and if they arrested me. Now you got to understand, of course, not everybody going to be willing to do this, but I created a paper trail. In case something goes wrong, I made all of these phone calls that can be established.
They don't have a right to question the citizens. See the difference between a Republican form of government and a democracy? And why they always run around telling you about a democracy? It's not a democracy. No democracy was established here. I don't know what anyone's talking about. Except that somebody's been setting you up to steal your birthrights. And as soon as a politician, I don't care who they are, suddenly recognize that they're an enemy. Forget about what they say. Forget about whether they're smiling. Forget about whether they're nice guys. They belong to the secret society of clubs of inquisitionists whose mission was to overthrow the United States Republic. Do you understand? And to institute and maintain slavery bureaucratically. Do you understand? I don't care if they say something in your favor. Do you understand? Don't be deceived.
The bottom line is
Exactly correct. Now that's for a start. That's for starters. So that's for starters. So one of the first things that we're going to do to start correcting this thing is anyone who claims to have any capacity, authoritative capacity in government, they don't move on anything with you without you questioning them right on down the line, starting off with their nationality card, their DOAO, Delegation of Authority Order, republic, or agency where their authority can be verified on the public record. And if it can't be, or if they're not forthcoming with it, or they don't have it in their possession, you have no problem with that. That person at that time has no authority, no different than if they stop a person under color of law on the street asking them for a license and they don't have a license, according to the colorable contract that they forced the people into, they're not supposed to be driving on the street. Am I correct?
I'll give you an example. I was walking down the street, leaving the studio, leaving my homeboy Zone studio like 5-6 years ago. It was like 3 of us. We was over there behind NC State on the west side. And the police stopped us. And it was like 2 cars. They circled back and they was like, yo, there's been break-ins. You know what I'm saying? It's been break-ins around the area. And yo, do you got your driver's license identification? And I said, respectfully, sir, I'm not black, I'm a Moor, and identification is for a foreigner. Do you have identification? Respectfully, sir, I'm a law student. He said, what is your name? My name is Bey. See, if they understand who you are, by your title, because we don't have names, by your title, I'm a law enforcer. So if you understand anything, which some cops do, some cops don't, but the superior does, he expects me to be on my shit. Right? Because that's what I represent as a Bey. Right? So when he stop and ask you, he's telling you when they stop you, you have to question. But the most important thing I want to express is no anger involved. You hear me? No anger involved. It's a difference between when you saying something that you read on a piece of paper or something that you believe. It has to be said with conviction, and you can stand and you can say it in a respectful manner, but you will learn. You can say it as respectful as you want. It's like throwing uppercuts, but you stand on it.
Likewise, if they don't have a DOAO, they're not supposed to be operating in government.
Excuse me. Name that again. Can you write that down? I got nothing.
Here you go.
Delegation of authority.
Delegation of authority order. And what that would be, what they would claim a license would be to a slave on the street to travel the land is what that is to anybody who says they have any authority in the first place. You don't know. There's a person that greased out of the grease pit back there down at McDonald's, and he went around the other side, put on a uniform, jumped in the car, and ran to stop you and start telling you you owe him something, like a highwayman. Well, DOAO with verifiable numbers is what identifies that person. So if somebody pulls out some ID and tells you, well, I'm an agent of the Bibelfetter of the left-hand side of the Ostbasseldorf of the United States. And you say, oh, please, don't say that again. I'm so nervous. There's so much money. You know, don't even go there. You ask them for ID, and a driver's license is not an ID. That verifies that you have a contract with a private corporation. Do you understand? That politicians have a contract with to get a kickback for robbing you, forcing you into contracts with private institutions, which they don't have the authority to do, but they did it.
Ooh.
You get the point?
Say that again. Say just move it slow.
Politicians who were slaveholders dumb the people down, saying this is a democracy. They created an admiralty court called traffic court, listed it under crimes because the Constitution only allows a criminal court and a civil court. And you can't try a civil case in a criminal court, and you can't try a criminal case in a civil court, can you? Now, where did the Constitution set up traffic court? To stop the people for freedom of passage on the land.
It does not exist. Meaning, it was a time in the 1900s where they convinced the people that they needed a driver's license. And when a person got a driver's license, then meaning, and I'm gonna break this down to you. When you got your driver's license, you didn't know, but they tricked you. You never needed one to travel if you understood law. You just had to say, look, I have the right to travel to point A to point B, right? And that's law. But when you went, because they trained us and conditioned our parents that you need a driver's license, you went and you signed over your natural birthright to just travel on land, and now you gave them permission to regulate you for your driver's license, then you got to renew it, or your ID, then you gave them permission, you know, especially your driver's license, and then you buy your car and you do the same ignorant shit. You get your car, and after you buy it, you take that shit to a corporation called the Department of Motor Vehicles, and you tell them, here, I'm going to give you some money so that now you own my car and now you can tell me what to do. And that's why they can make you pay taxes on a car that you're supposed to own legally.
Apartheid. So they created traffic court, which really is an apartheid court. So that the slaves, so-called slaves, could never be free. Because if they could stop your movement, just like you dam up a river on a stream, you create death. Because movement is life. And so you can regulate the economy simply. If I want to break your family up, all I got to do is send out a fake officer to keep stopping you on the corner, take your license, and you can't make a living. But they never had that right. Government never had that right.
See, understand why George Washington wrote in that first letter to the king of Morocco and of this land. He said he wrote that it was more common for Moors to have libraries in their house than it was to have refrigerators and stoves. So he was identifying how intelligent they were. Everybody. They started teaching law to the kids at 5, probably younger. 3 started reading to them, 3, 4, but started teaching them law as children. Because if we traveled the world, that means we knew the law of everywhere. Why? Because we set up the foundation of law everywhere.
Now, these are private corporate entities that operating on private charter that's using supreme law of the land to interfere with the rights of the citizens and the natural people and robbing them legally. Not lawfully, legally. Legal and lawful is not the same thing. So don't get that caught up either. Do you understand? Because the supreme law is the Constitution.
Meaning, etymology. When you get I tell everybody you want to get on your shit, get you a Black's Law dictionary. The oldest you can find, the better. They get more expensive because they got the truth in them. If you look up lawful and legal, they're 2 completely definitions. What's lawful is the law. What's legal is kind of like navigating around the law.
Now, let's look at this. Now, let's back to this other point. And the key thing, because I...
Or let me say it clear. In court, they were like, sir, it's against the law to drive without a license. And then I just look at them and say, for the record, I was traveling. You know what I'm saying?
No, you already know certain things already. So the first issue with an issue of controversy is the status. That means, who are you? Oh, you're Russian? Oh, no problem with that. Where's your documents that say it? Not your mouth. That's how you challenge jurisdiction. You don't say, I challenge the jurisdiction. You challenge the jurisdiction understanding these principles.
Now, for all my Moors who be watching me in the Moor circuit, or the people that do understand law a little bit, let me tell you how important this is to understand. One of the hardest things to understand is jurisdiction. How do you challenge the status? I'm sorry. Meaning, when you challenge status, that's how you properly challenge the jurisdiction. It took me years to understand this properly. Other than that, when you go in court and you say it the wrong way, they kind of laugh like he's a rookie. So they fuck with you a little more. But when you understand, for example, they call you up. No. I come up there. As soon as they get up there, they say what they need to say. And that's when I stand up and I say, for the record, can you state your status, what country you come from, your nationality, and who flag and who laws you're enforcing on my soil? Now, I know the questions I ask cannot be answered because they took oaths. See, this is the power of understanding your history and law. So I know no matter what the judge tells me, it's a lie. And as soon as the judge finished, I sit down and I say, let the record reflect what the judge says. They know I ain't fucking playing. Now the judge and everybody in that courtroom, they're aware that they are under a real person, meaning that I'm a human being, and that when I say for the record, the clerk has to write it down in case they lock me up, and then I got a federal case. You know what I'm saying? So that's the power. Challenging the status is the proper way to challenge jurisdiction. You know what I mean? And the status is, my honor, can you state for the record your name and nationality and what country flag you represent and who law you're imposing on my soil? You're going to get an attitude for sure. So you'll learn what questions that you ask that they're going to blow up on you, but you have to let them. They're just showing out for the court. Let them. And then at the end, every time you ask a question, 9 times out of 10, they're lying. Your job, and what they say, your job is not to free the slaves. Remember, when we in court, we're inside of a slave selling, technically. Like, they're still selling slaves. And when we go to court, we can't free the slaves. Our job as an individual is to go to the courtroom and to distinguish ourselves from being colored. That's how this benefits you. Knowledge is power only if the shit can be applied. The reason why that this information can be applied, because I do this shit. I've done it many times. And people will tell you, if you can do this, it works for you. You want to save your sons, they need to know law. And they need to know certain things. So especially if they get hit after that, it puts the country in a whole nother bond. You get what I'm saying? But at the same time, it has to be used in the rightful manner, meaning that we can't just be out here doing anything and still using this and thinking shit can't go left.
You get the point? So, if you say you have authority, I'm not going to argue about that. Oh, no problem. I have no problem whatsoever. Alisa, I have no problem with that whatsoever. She just said I had to do something. Here's my nationality card. Now put yours there. Because nationality is where the birthright is. And for the law to be governing you, then you, if you're Russian, you're not saying that you're what? Asiatic? Because we're all Asiatic. But that's not the point. Russia is a part of Asia, am I correct? Below it is India, am I correct? Which ain't India, that's Hindustan, right? Am I correct?
Yeah.
Oh, so, where's your nationality card? So how you gonna be talking the law of a land that gives authority and you haven't even proven who you are? Because this is a jurisdiction of diversity.
Why do you have to prove who you are? You have not given birthright.
Can I go to Russia? Can I go to Misraim? Can I go to Saudi Arabia? Can I go to different parts of the world? Many of them I'll be accepted as one of the people unless by accent or by culture, they recognize that I come from another area. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And start demanding issues of law, and I haven't proven who I am. The first issue is status. Who am I? So now we've established who we are, right? Just like if we're coming in the issue of controversy, right? First of all, as an example, just like say, for instance, in any issue of legal or lawful issue, when you present yourself, that's really status, although they've corrupted it. So you present yourself. Now, the reason why, quote unquote, as it has been in the United States processes, Negro, black, and color are corporate fictions. And if the person agreed that they are that,
what for, y'all? People be blowing.
Can I go to different parts of the world? Many of them I'll be accepted as one of the people unless by accent or by culture, they recognize that I come from another area. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And start demanding issues of law, and I haven't proven who I am. The first issue is status. Who am I? So now we've established who we are, right? Just like if we're coming in the issue of controversy, right? First of all, as an example, just like say, for instance, in any issue of legal or lawful issue, when you present yourself, that's really status, although they've corrupted it. So you present yourself. Now, the reason why, quote unquote, as it has been in the United States processes of law, why Negroes, blacks, and coloreds could not represent themselves in court because Negro, black, and color are corporate fictions. And if the person agreed that they are that, then, they have a right to make that contract. See, because government's not there to interfere with your right to make contract. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you claim to be something that someone else coined to name their chattel, and you agree to that, logically you come under Christian Black Code 1724, and it's no problem because you agree to that. Because there's no such people listed on this planet anywhere in the human family. It does not exist. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So, but there are laws that regulate such chattel or such things. Can't call it human because it's not part of the human family. Never made a law, contract, constitution, so therefore you cannot bring it before a free national court and argue issues of law because it doesn't apply to it. Now, because a person agrees to be it, that's on them. If they're ignorant of their birthright, whether somebody took it from them or whether they agreed to it, both the effect is the same. Now, of course, you can get maybe the family that enslaved their family line to come up and speak for them because they can't speak for themselves because they're barred from law. They have they're in a position of no judicio standi, have no standing in law. Of course, if they don't know that, and then somebody gives them, on this other hand, some documents that make statements about law that really sound, this is really deep. And you know, he's really got to do is he got to give me a sandwich according to this. And you start arguing all that, oh yeah, I got this. Just wait till I tell him he's got to give me a cheese sandwich. Oh. And you talking big stuff and they still take you to some fraud jurisdiction you ain't figured out because you agreed to be Negro, black, and colored because they have no standing in law. This is the reason why they want to hide the Moorish connection, because the United States Republic came out of the dissolution of the Moroccan government here, United States of Morocco. Do you understand? That's why the United States of America here in the central part has no national name. Like here you got the United States of Mexico, you got the United States of Brazil, right? You got the United States of El Salvador, let's see, El Salvador, there's a couple more that are United States. So you have a lot of United States of America. This is the reason why they'll just use the name or the word America. And if you never stop and think, you never recognize that that's not attached to anything here. They'll claim jurisdiction here, and they'll claim jurisdiction here. And they'll claim jurisdiction here, and they'll claim jurisdiction here. And they'll claim jurisdiction here. They'll claim,
But you know what they do?
they bring the law of the seas because they don't have no jurisdiction. They don't have no law. And they bring it on the land, and you're not debating it because you are assuming that they have jurisdiction, and they're assuming the jurisdiction that you give them.
So in other words, what you're saying then, under the United States, well, that yellow is all under the admiralty law.
It's exactly correct. They're pirates.
So wait a minute, then that explains an example. We went to Chinatown for dinner, right?
Yes.
For a meal. They were taping us while we were eating. I became upset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if you think about it. I became upset.
Mm-hmm.
Very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That. The gentleman, I said to him, are you taping us while we eat? The waiter can barely speak English, but he can speak English well enough to say, we tape all, what do you call us, what's the word? Civilians. So I said, I said, civilians? Why we're not in the military? My mind got to clicking.
No, civilians, meaning the common people, they have whatever purpose they have. It doesn't really matter. I wouldn't be that concerned, to be honest with you, myself.
Yeah, but
Because
see, the way we think, though, as soon as you say civilians, I automatically go connect that with admiralty.
well, no, because that'd be military. So, civilians is relative to the common people, to the civil people.
Well, then I'm brainwashed.
You would say the military as opposed to civilian. Civilian implies non-military.
Can I say something to you, sir?
Yes.
I'm 59 years old, okay? That's the first time in my life that I've been injured and been referred to a situation like that, type of setting, as a civilian.
Yeah.
And like I said,
Skip
I
it a
didn't
little
say
bit.
that by that.
Majority of being in a seat and starting to make judgments over you. And you never question them. And they become secured in it. Meaning that you become secured in the corruption of fiction, of both fiction of brand names and a fiction of subordinate position. They become corrupted in a position of sovereign superiority and authority that both of the parties never exist, and we're both guilty. So the first thing is not to, when you come to start getting into this information, do not get caught up in the race game. Do not get caught up in the color game. Do not get caught up in that self-righteousness because we've been injured at this time. Oh, they're dirty and we're good type thing. Don't get caught up there. You have to start breaking these things down in their component parts and then reassembling them and understanding what you're dealing with. Moors gave up their birthright when they started accepting Negro, black, colored, and following after the idol gods of Europe that they knew little of, gave up their culture, gave up their birthright, fell into servitude, been transacting business in alien names for quite a few generations, thinking that they're secured, discovering that they're not, and now they're pissed. If you get the point. You understand?
Stupid white people follow right behind.
No, the deal is that we're white people. See, this is the deal.
They followed right behind them.
Now, this is the deal. This is the trap. And this is the same thing I told to Emily Ford about 8 or 9 years ago. She came to the round table. when she was talking about issues that were happening with the free men, with the Europeans, which are a lot of times different principles that will stand for, colorable government will compare us with a lot of these principles and will imply that we're separatists and all that kind of crap, which is totally a lie. The fact of the matter is that they're criminals and we're standing for the law. What we need to be clear is that that's what the position is. The people must be very clear. Don't assume because they have the seats that they're the law and you're trying to ask them for recognition. Understand that you're the law and you're telling them what the position is. They know that the public is dumb and they're using color of law to usurp the law and stand on that. In other words, they're holding a colorable posture knowingly, but are confident that the masses of the public don't know and are using public policy, do you understand, to operate on. And what we need to always be thinking about is that that's where they are. And they haven't even changed the game because they haven't recognized a need to. Do you understand what I'm saying? What happens is that people who become conscious, and this is what I told Emily Ford a few years ago, about 8 years ago, something like 8, 9 maybe, when she came to the round table. And she came to the round table, she said, can I come to the round table? Is that all right? I said, round table's open. And she was telling me about the problems different problems they were having with the different freemen's group and why they burnt stuff and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, look, our principles are the same, but the status is different. I said, now, and this is the problem that like Europeans have. When they took out of the Whigmore party, took on the white caste, do you understand? And then start calling themselves white people. They gave up their birthright. Do you understand? So what happens is, when the Tories discover that they no longer have allegiance to the Whigs party, do you understand? And then start trying to go back to the Republican form of government that the Moors and the Europeans set up, which would undermine the Inquisitionists, they will kill them and burn them and burn the evidence.
Who told you? Excuse me?
Do you understand?
Yes, I do. I'm shocked that
See?
you understand.
Oh, I'm telling you why. Because when a European starts talking to issues of sovereignty, they must understand that the only way that Europeans have a right of authority in our land is through constitutional Republican form of government only to all the several states. Outside of that, they're only resident aliens. And since they agreed to be white people, which took them out of the constitutional fold of government, which made them enemies to the United States Republic, which has been veiled over. It ain't disappeared, it's been veiled over with this corporate conspiracy. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, so unconscious to many of the European sons, they're trying to get back to the Republic and not tell the Asiatics the truth about themselves. No different than the problem that the U.S. is having with the Yiddish that are in Palestine, that are calling themselves Jews, who threaten them to tell us the real deal. And they got to give them anything they want. They can have spies in the government. They can mess with the White House's old lady, girlfriend, and they'll give them $1 billion tomorrow if they ask for it. You understand? I'm serious.
I know you are, and you're right.
And you know why? Because they know we're the Jews. I'm just giving you little keys. I'm giving you little keys.
Let me say this to you. If nothing else, we learned in our communities as children growing up, and I saw it. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. A true Jew is
This video is all track. That's
No,
how old it is.
that's not true. You must correct.
Correct me. I'm listening.
Black is the code for a slave. Once you start taking the fiction and making it retroactive, you just again gave up your birthright.
So how
how do you do it? One of the first lessons is you are not Negro, black, or colored, or Ethiopian. You are Moors.
So in other words, the true Jews were Moors.
There was Moabite Canaanite blood. And Moor is just a modern name for Moroccan or Moroccan American, which is a corruption of Moroccan. And you got Moabite, Canaanite, Hittites. Mostly of Moabites, you might have had some of the Chaldeans.
Madison, what up?
Abyssinian tribes were dealt with a Jew creed, but Jew is really a degree in ancient culture.
And that's a religion within
Jew is really a degree of knowledge in ancient culture, not really a bloodline, though we may be Hebrew. Do you understand? Tribal.
Yeah, not only that, they're known for education.
Our problem is that our concepts are wrong. We've allowed, once you start allowing sorcerers to control the name, because this is the key to sorcery. Once you control the name, you can put your spirit on it. You create something that was not. You name it, you put your spirit on it, then the law applies to that you regulate within that jurisdiction. Once you get someone else to agree to be in that jurisdiction or to be that which they are not, you have them. But they must do it willingly, because everything in civilization operates by covenant, by a contract. This is the reason why in any proper issues of adjudication, they ask you, do you understand? Meaning, do you agree? Because they can't proceed because you haven't bonds. You haven't given them leave. So they say, you really got that eyeglass case in your pocket? Do you understand? He said, yeah. All right, now they got jurisdiction. What are you supposed to say? No, I don't know. Explain to me. Well, no, you're being difficult. And that's an eyeglass case in your pocket. You said, what? You said it. I didn't say it. See, long as that's going on, he can't move. Anything he does, it can be overturned, or he's actually violating his jurisdiction if he proceeds. But if you don't know that, he can trick you into walking into that false jurisdiction that you're arguing about in the first place. And then he proceeds, and he goes past status, he accepts jurisdiction, and the improper venue can be the same thing as lacking jurisdiction. He got that assumed, then he starts adjudicating. That's why you don't talk the matter. You don't talk the matter. It has nothing to discuss. We haven't dealt with this. 1, 2, 3. Hey, what are you talking about? What's in the box of the cereal box? You haven't proved that you're a party, that you have any authority even to discuss this issue. Where's your nationality card?
You know what? Why are we allowing our children to go to these schools?
Do we have much choice? Why? You ask why. Do we have much choice? Yes or no? It's a qualified yes or no. One, because, let me see.
Let me give y'all, started y'all this morning with law. I'm going to give y'all a flip for a second. Brighten up the day. But I'm going to bounce back and forth through law, and we'll build on it. And as y'all be able to bounce back, and when we go live, y'all got questions. Because a lot of the stuff, you know what I'm saying? Hold on 1 second. Give y'all the goods. I'm gonna lighten it up for y'all. Let's get it.
Equipment to make thin lips and to make
some history.
So they had to use that, and it wouldn't make. But then the little details of a fingernail, they had the equipment for that, but not for the thin lips.
Is it important though to say that Africans did this?
Oh yes. If no one had said the Africans didn't do it, it wouldn't be important. But since that had been said for no reason at all, they wanted to satisfy themselves that although they were not in history, that they did it. Now, since it is that the people whose ancestors did could not say anything about it in the past, now is the time that they declare to the world whose legacy it is.
All four of these figures are of the same man.
Ramesses II. Ramesses ruled for about 67 years and was an engineer. And is known to have commissioned, not only that, his architect was known to at many times had him come and do some supervision. Like our symbol, it said that he supervised the building of our symbol himself.
So he was an engineer?
He was also an engineer. He was a very accomplished man.
So would he be qualified to be called a priest?
He studied in the priesthood. He took the reign of his father in 1298 when his father died. And he ruled until 1232. Some people vary a few years one way or the other. Some say 1230, some say, but around 2 years isn't going to make a difference.
How long did he live?
He ruled from 1298, according to Maneto's figure, until 1232, 67 years.
But how long did he live?
He lived to be 98, something like that.
98 years?
98, 97 years old.
And he had how many offspring, do you know?
Well, he had as many offspring as you got guides. Some say this. So he had many wives. Some said 200 offspring. Somebody said 100 offspring. Some 30, 40. I don't know, but quite a lot.
And wives? How many wives did he have?
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot. But who was his favorite wife?
His favorite wife was Nefertari II.
What would possess somebody to look at something this magnificent and mark it up like that and defile it with their name?
There are many factors. One, hate. Two, grudge. Four, their own smallness. And five, it's a means of saying, I did it.
Now, in between these figures is a passageway. What's in there?
That's to get into the temple. That is an actual temple with a hypostyle hall, although there are only 4 columns on each side. And then on the walls, you will see the wars that Ramesses II fought with the Hittites and others. Of course, no record of the war, any war with the Hebrews, none whatsoever.
And at the end of the corridor, there's a little chamber. What's that?
There's what you call the antechamber, and the next chamber to that, the last, would be the Holy of Holies or the sanctuary.
Holy of Holies.
And inside the Holy of Holies would have the triad. Like you have the Trinity.
Yes.
That's where the concept of ancient Egyptian in every city had a holy triad, T-R-I-A-D, 3 gods. Normally a god, a goddess, and a god. A god, the father, a goddess, the mother, and a god, the son. The holy trinity that Christianity adopted. You notice this side. These are supposed to be the Asian captives of war of Ramesses II. You notice that? Carefully. Now let's shift side. These are supposed to be Nubians or generally Africans, but they are tied the exact same way as these on the side. Yet, in America, in the classroom, these are called Negro slaves of Ramesses. But these are called, in the same textbook, by the same professors, Asian captive or Semitic captives.
Prisoners of war.
No. Prisoner of war here, but slaves there. Now, what made the difference?
I can't possibly imagine.
All right, my brother.
If you remember in school about the 4th, 5th grade, they showed us that picture, and they were trying to prove to us in school that our own people, that Africans had slaves, because they did teach us about it, but they would always show us that they had slaves. So on the wall on one side, it shows some Asiatics, like some Asian black people, and then it shows some Nubians, which is the real dark people of South Africa. And they were saying, the dark people side, that was their slaves, and the other people, those are captives of war. The point Dr. Ben was making was that neither one of them were slaves, but that they had fought multiple wars, and they were just showing you different wars they fought, and that they had won the war. So those was captives or prisoners of wars of those nations, because it wasn't about color back then.
Dr. Ben, what are we looking at here? What is he filming?
That is the Opet procession, the procession of the priests. And after Ramesses come back from war and is victorious, it is the procession of the priests. Here is before God Ptah. He's in front, Ramesses is in front of God Ptah, appealing for long life.
What are we looking at?
The war of the Hittites against Egypt. Ramesses pursuing and fighting the Hittites. If you notice, the figures show you the strictly African characters.
So that's him on top of the chariot.
Him and his chariot.
And he's driving them out.
Yes, right.
You gotta remember, they had like 150 years and they was in there scrubbing the walls with certain chemicals that try to change the complexions of the people, but you can still see the dark pieces, you know? Because they did color the people in, you know what I mean?
Just slaying one of the enemies. And he wouldn't be slaying an ordinary soldier. He's slaying either the mayor or the king, but he wouldn't be shown slain because his men killed the regular men.
Who was he killing, though?
The Hittites.
The Hittites.
Hittites.
And who were the Hittites?
The Hittites are people from Asia.
All right. And there he is again.
That's right. And notice.
Waging war.
That's right.
Now,
and there he is wearing a suit with a penis cup, by the way. That is to protect
his enemies.
Slaying the enemies.
As we left, Dr. Ben explained that this magnificent temple was originally located much closer to the Nile River.
Keita, what up?
And was recently moved.
So they had to raise this 100 feet up and back 600 feet.
5 nations assigned their best engineers to move these temples to higher ground to avoid them being engulfed by the rising waters from the newly constructed Aswan Dam. The monuments could not be moved intact, so they were painstakingly cut into smaller blocks and reassembled at this present location. The rescue effort cost a then estimated $36 million and was hailed as an engineering miracle, and rightly so. But what then does one say of those who originally created all of this, some 3,287 years ago?
So think about how many structures have been lost underwater with things, because they were saying that they had to move certain structures, meaning they had to cut them apart and put them back together to move them uphill so that the ocean, or that the Nile wouldn't, flood because the waters is rising. So think about how much is underwater.
The second.
This was Ramesses' favorite.
His most favorite what? Here's Ramesses.
And he lived to 99?
About 97.
97, I'm sorry. Good man.
Yes, I think he was that.
Now this is Ramesses again.
This is Ramesses.
And that's a goddess.
That's Hathor.
Hathor, I can tell by the horns.
That's Nefertari. And see the graffiti there too. The mark of graffiti and them all over. It's typical of their behavior.
What do we have in here, Dr. Ben, on this wall?
The same thing, you have God Horus, or blessing the king, and here again you have the God Ptah also blessing the king, King Ramesses II. Nefertiti in front of Ptah.
Now this is a goddess.
Yes, it's
by her headdress.
But Nefertiti coming in the person of goddess Hathor.
I see.
And paying honor to the king Ptah.
What is this depicting here?
She is visiting goddess. She is again paying homage to goddess Hathor. Remember what I said? Hathor comes with the sun disk between the horn of the cow.
Right.
Now we know it's Hathor. If you put a little chair, the throne, on the top, it becomes what?
Osiris.
Isis.
Isis, I'm sorry.
If you put a maze, it becomes her sister, Nephthys.
How was this work done?
With chisel?
They gouged out, this is granite.
Yeah.
And they gouged it out.
They chisel it out. Now, in some work, where they didn't chisel, they take the work and they put a thin layer of plastic.
Yes.
And when the plastic was damp, they put a plate of the design, lightly. Then they came and draw it over it. But in this case, where they got to chisel into the material, it was done with hammer and chisel.
And what about
when in place, not on the ground? They first to put the stone up, then they do the finishing while it's up.
colors? Where did they get their colors from?
From clay, from tree barks, and they made their own color. Flowers different way. They made different kinds of stain and dyes with the color.
To last this long, huh?
Oh yes, because they put it in the mortar, and it goes in, it penetrates.
This was a place then for all people to come and worship.
It's a temple.
But the temple was in the name of
Goddess Hathor.
Goddess Hathor.
Nefertari temple for Goddess Het Heru, Goddess Hathor. Hathor, or Het, listen, Het, wife, Heru, wife of Horus.
Now, what is the significance of the figures being seated?
Well, the pharaoh was at rest and he's sitting on his throne.
Okay.
See, next to him on his side is his throne.
And because Nefertari's feet are one in front of the other, she's alive.
Oh, the whole thing is alive. And you know he's alive, he's sitting on the throne. The only how you would know that he's dead if he had crossed his hands. No, even if the foot together is sitting down, he has to have crossed his hand, which you could do sitting down also, like an X. And then you will see the flail in one hand.
Yes.
And the crook in the other.
That means
he's dead. But he's one of the pharaoh who in real life had a beard. Because even in alive, they put a beard on him.
Look at those lips.
I get that nose. Can you say I see my father there? At his ancestors? I mean, there can be no doubt about it. However,
that's not Charlton Heston.
Yeah, no. and Nefertari is not Elizabeth Taylor.
Thank you. I noticed that between his knees there are cartouches. What did I say?
His name. Amen Mary Ra. Ra Mary Amen. Ramesses. Ra Mary Amen.
So that's a standard that they established to identify themselves as the cartouche.
The monarch was represented by the cartouche. If you don't see the cartouche, you can't say. You might have seen a statue look exactly and say, this is so-and-so. You can't say it because there's no cartouche. To be sure, you must have the cartouche.
But now to identify the god and the goddesses, you don't necessarily need the cartouche because it's the head,
yes,
the headdress.
Yes. That never changed for the one goddess is never shown with the other goddess appear. You got to be careful in only 3 cases. Nefertari, I'm sorry, Isis or Aset.
Yes.
Het Heru or Hathor. And Nephthys. You got to be careful with them because they're represented with a cow's horns, all of them, and a disc within the cow horn.
So how do you tell between?
On top the disc, you have a little throne. That's Isis.
Yes.
Without the disc,
yes,
it's Hathor. And with a little maze It's not this. That's the way you tell one for the other. Because if you see it with one, it's impossible to be. If you see the throne and the disc, it's impossible to be anybody else than ISIS.
So and if you, just to keep you alert, they
make you make you look for that loan to see who it is.
Abu Simbel early enough to visit another temple that had been rescued from the rising waters created by the dam, the temple at Philae.
What god is this temple honoring?
Maybe more so goddess.
Goddess.
Aset or Ast, otherwise called Isis. Isis is the sister of her husband, god Asaru, Asar, otherwise called Osiris.
When was this built and under whose dynastic reign?
Well, the earliest period for this will go back to the Roman period, the Greek period. Mm-hmm. And the Greek period doesn't start any earlier than 332 BC because the Greeks came to Egypt as conquerors during 332, but it didn't start at that particular time. It is supposed to have been started during around 70 or so before the Common Era.
Before we get into more of the religious meaning, just architecturally, this whole alignment, the alignment of the column is just magnificent. And it's just an architectural wonder unto itself. Did it have a ceiling? Was it covered?
Yes, you could see some of the slabs there. It was all covered, but you would notice something else so that you could notice that this column over here isn't finished, isn't complete.
Yeah.
That show you that all that beautiful thing you see, notice that they're in different stages. They would bring the stone and put them in place. Then they would carve them. That's very important note. But you also would note that there is a difference in the typical ancient Egyptian column as against these. These have made transformation in the design.
I see.
And whereas you will see, these are multiplicity of design concepts in there, and as you go up, you see the difference in change. Here you notice the fluted part is very narrow.
Yes.
With 3 bands, 4 bands, whereas a little further up, take the third one, the fluted column is wider, the flute wider in dimension.
I see what you... Now, are all temples, including this one, basically the same in structure, that there's an ante-chamber and it goes back until you get to the Holy of Holies?
Basically, they start out with a people's court, open, and then if it's a large temple, it will be other courts with different pylons, or that would be a pylon. There'll be inner pylons. Now, after that, there will be a hypostyle hall of column, or otherwise called a pillared hall. After that, there will be an ante-chamber, which would be prior to the Holy of Holies.
Which is always at the end.
Generally, the Holy of Holies is the last room to the east. Most of the worship temples are on the east bank. Most of the funerary temples are on the west bank. And the reason for that is Ra rises, God, Ra, rises in the morning and comes up in the east. In the night, Ra goes to the next world, go to sleep, and go down in the west.
These 2 major edifices here, there are figures that were there and they've been chipped away. Who was depicted here and who chipped them away and why?
Well, the central figure in all of this is, in this particular temple, will be Goddess Isis. This is her temple. And when you look at this, you will see Goddess Isis and other gods, God Horus, which, by the way, is her son. But you're dealing with Horus, or Heru, as the proper name would be, at various periods of his life. You would see then various gods. You see there, Goddess Hathor, which became the surrogate mother of God Heru. So the story is going to give you, from here, you will see other phases of this when you go to other temples. When we go inside, we will see that the early Christians set their cross, and they're going to put them on columns under the walls. They set their various instruments for worship, like altar and so forth.
You mean they commandeered this temple for their own use?
Right. They considered heathen and pagan, but they used the same heathen and pagan temple for their own church. This is the purification rites, or baptism. You see the water, symbolically the water, comprises of the ankh,
yes,
and the wash scepter. Both things together, intermittently. Ankh, wash scepter, ankh, wash scepter, as the water. See, they're hanging down there at the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
And this
is being baptized?
The Pharaoh.
Now, as we go back in here now, that is
the altar that the Christians use. The original altar that the ancient Egyptian used, that has gone.
But it was in that room that was known as the Holy of Holies.
Holy of Holies, or the sanctuary.
And that was
only the high priest.
In a sense, then that was violated.
Oh yes, oh yes. That is the most sacred part of the temple.
Our tour was now in full stride as we left Aswan and headed north, that's down the Nile, toward the city of Luxor with all its many important temples, as you will see in our next special edition, or Egypt, affectionately known as Dr. Ben. We began in Cairo, seeing the great pyramids at Giza. And then we came south and saw the majestic temples at Abu Simbel. And in Aswan, we visited the Philae Temple out in the middle of the Nile. Dr. Ben explained to us some of the writings on the temple walls.
People in the States arguing all the time that the ankh comes from the cross. Not at all. There is an ankh, and there is a cross. Ankh there, and a cross to your left, and up. They mean two different things, have always meant two different things. Never has one been another.
Outside the main temple are lesser temples.
Now, this is off of the main temple, which is behind us. What is this here?
This is a kiosk.
What's that mean?
A small little chapel. And it's the chapel belonging to goddess Hathor, Heteru. Now, what's unique about this temple, if you come here, look at there. And you see God Bes. This was originally the original God of the Nile. God of the life, because the life was life source. Now you see Bes playing every instrument there is. The harp, which you thought was a European instrument. Here is God Bless playing the tambourine. Here. Here is God Bless playing the flute and the canobo. Here is over there playing in the form of a monkey, playing what we call the electric guitar. Here is it. Look at like any electric. Here is playing a bassoon. Here, you see me? He's playing all the major instruments that you thought were European.
Why you say that? I knew this a long time ago.
Yeah, but I just want to refresh your memory.
The back of this lesser temple looks out on a lake created by the building of a dam, which would have engulfed the temple had it not been disassembled and moved to this higher ground.
These are the remnants that they took out from that old site.
Yes.
And sooner or later, they're going to be restored somewhere here.
Here. These remnants are going here. Build this temple here. They got 5,000 another island, which they will also bring here as money come available.
You know something? What I noticed here, there's some colors there.
Yes.
Of red and blue.
Right.
Right towards the top.
And the back, yes. Some of the original.
That brilliant blue color.
And remember now that
right up here towards the top.
Yes,
of this.
yes. And remember that some down by that low roof there too.
Yeah.
And remember some here, different places. But remember this was mostly underwater all year round.
We boarded a launch across the Nile to meet our bus to go to Luxor. We saw a hotel that was in business during British rule. Dr. Ben was barred from staying here at that time. And then we were on our way to historic Luxor, with stops along the way at two important temples laden with information, as you will see.
This is the temple of Komombo, the double temple of the crocodile-headed god Subik and the falcon-headed god Haros.
When was this built and who built it?
This was originally a temple before the Roman period and the Greek period. However, when the Greeks came as conquerors, they ordered a temple be built here, and this also called the Greek period. That was done by the Ptolemies.
Is this the same concept in all the temples that you go back into different?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
The open court, the hypostyle hall, the antechamber, and the Holy of Holies, but this is a double temple. What you have on one side, you also have on the other side. So you have two Holy of Holies in this temple.
I see. Now I see Horus. And this is a good shot of the baptism, isn't it?
Yes. There you have, in this case, there you have Horus, or Horakti, and you have the Pharaoh, the Ptolemy, and you have the god of scribes, the god of historians, and that will be Tahuti. The Greeks call him Thot.
Are these original colors here?
Oh, those are some of the original. That goes back to the original.
Boy, this must have been just gorgeous.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This is the purification rites, or baptism of the Pharaoh. This is the god Tahuti, sometimes called Thot if you're using from the Greek way. He is holding the jar, the goblet, with the holy water, and on the opposite side is Haros, holding another. They're pouring the holy water over the Pharaoh.
Which Pharaoh?
This is Ptolemy 11th, or Ptolemy 12th. You notice that the holy water is made up of Ankh and was scepter. Ankh was scepter. Ankh was scepter. The Ankh is the key of life, the symbol of the key of life. The was scepter is the highest authority of the king.
So baptism didn't take place when you were an infant?
Oh, no. Well, baptism goes back for thousands of years, long before the story of Jesus and John the Baptist.
But contrary to the way we've been taught to think of baptism, it took place when you were grown.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, what's it the next?
The next is the preparation of the coronation scene with the putting of the crown on the Pharaoh's head. And here you have the god Nith and goddess putting the goddesses, Nith and the one, putting the crown on the king's head. And Horus witness it. Horus is carrying the was scepter. You remember you just saw the was scepter? Yes. This is the highest authority, the was scepter.
And you can see that's Horus because it's the head of the falcon.
He's carrying the head of the falcon on the head, and the disc of God Ra on the head. And here you have